And here's a look at the bracket and what you have to look forward to in the quarterfinal matchups coming up on Friday. Morocco, United States at 9 a.m. Eastern, followed by Japan and Spain at 11. Egypt and Paraguay will face off at 1, and France, Argentina will round things out at 3 p.m. That is going to be one to watch. A lot of storylines surrounding that matchup. But let's key in first on the United States getting not just the 3 goals, but the clean sheet as well. And watching with ease was kind of the feeling because the U.S. did look so dominant in that game in every phase of the game. Tony, what was your biggest takeaway from the performance that we saw from the U.S. and how they've progressed through this group stage?
Hallie, I think we figured out that this team needs to press and then they need to play at a higher speed and a higher tempo and be brave. That first 15 minutes, I don't know how many balls we picked off in the first 15 minutes within 40 yards of the opposition goal. And we talked about it yesterday, the difference between the France match and then the New Zealand match and how we thought the identity of this team was more of what we saw against New Zealand. It's what we saw yesterday right from the start. So they get a great goal by Mihailović to make it 1-0 on the free kick, but it came off a press again. And I don't see that we can change that style of play. We tried it against France. It didn't really work. But I understand the tactic against France. I get it. But I think they've put a marker down that this is how they have to play to be successful.
Yeah, Marko Mitrović found the formula yesterday in the game, clearly. No Duncan Maguire. He opted for... I don't necessarily want to call it a false 9 because I don't think it was particularly that.
It felt like a false 9 for most of the game, right?
But I don't know, it functioned particularly like a false 9. I guess if you put a winger in that position, you can call it a false 9. But rather, the functionality of it all was that there was a lot of fluidity and understanding in that central channel between Paxton Aaronson and Đorđe Mihailović. And I thought because of that, Mihailović was better, Paxton Aaronson was better. But Griffin Yao was a constant threat on the left, and Paredes was really good on the right. So it feels like this is the way to go. And not only that, with Tanner Tessman and Dietz was I think, the biggest surprise of it all, right? Because, okay, fine, Duncan Maguire doesn't play. You have Griffin Yao. That felt natural. It felt normal. But we were all thinking Jack McGlynn was going to play in the midfield. But the presence of Dietz as the deeper of the 2 holding midfielders allowed Tanner Tessman to have a little bit more mobility, more freedom, come closer to goal. And it worked out really well, collectively.
I think it actually presents a bit of a conundrum for Marko Mitrović versus finding a formula, because I think it goes to show, okay, Duncan Maguire is not going to play. You said it exactly. They're still able to play more central, which is what I wanted to see more of, and still be really effective on the wings. In fact, in a way, it almost felt like you were more effective on the wings, having that central channel as an option. Having defenders feel like they need to focus more centrally creates more space for your wingers.
And I think to get in behind, which was like what we were asking for, right? How many times Paredes in behind, getting to that end line, Yao as well.
And I think also what I saw from Paredes in the France game and a little bit in the New Zealand game, which is, willing to take a foul, willing to call for a foul in those moments, sort of build that, plant those seeds with the ref a little bit as the game progresses to create even more pressure on those defenders. I think you saw it really come to fruition in this match where it lent right into his game.
Paredes is a guy I think we knew coming into this what he was, who he was. We've seen him with the full team. Man, I'll tell you what, Griffin Yao and Aaronson are really, like, I understand we've known Aaronson for a little while, but we don't get to see him on a weekly basis. These 2 players have grown they've grown up over the last year at
Griffin
their clubs.
Yao in particular, he made a leap.
Yeah, he is a completely different player than what we saw him here in the league, and it's refreshing to see. So when we revisit that conversation at some point about who might get a call to the U.S. men's national team, there might be 1 or 2 more names if they continue to perform like this.
Hey, we can keep that conversation going right now. Who would you add to the list? We talked about Tessman the other day. What are the names that
Griffin Yao.
Griffin Yao.
I would add him to the list. Like I love his qualities. I had Aaronson on that list. We already knew Paredes. Paxton has been really good, and Tanner Tessman was the other one I had on that list as well. So I would add Griffin Yao. There's something in him that the movement, the bravery, the willingness to get forward, the pressure he puts on players. Like, I like his qualities. I don't know if he's a full national team player just yet, but I think he's going to be a full national team player, has at least the ability to be a full national team player down the road.
There's potential for a lot of these guys. Again, I feel like we tend to get carried away with big glamorous results.
So now's not the time to show you my Griffin Yao tattoo?
No, no.
Wait.
Yeah.
It's on my lower back.
It's yeah, and even more so. Please. Look, we played against two teams that were very bad. They were not good, and we tend to get excited because naturally we won with gusto. We won in an emphatic style. We're progressing into this tournament. We had a good game against France, and they demolished us after an hour. Right? We're playing with the big boys now. Knockout stage against Morocco, who's been really good in the group stage. This is where you want to see these guys shine, and this is where you want to see them in a tryout say, hey, I'm good enough to play on the senior team, right? So it's a nice progression that we got on this group stage. I'm confident in this group that they can put up a fight against Morocco and have all the potential to beat them.
Speaking of Griffin Yao in particular, I hope this is a sign for Westerlo. I'm not sure how to pronounce that team.
Westerlo?
Okay, that one. The third option, which I didn't go with.
I don't know. I made that up.
Hopefully,
I can't be.
Hopefully, maybe he, gets a move to a bigger club. No disrespect to Westerlo.
But not at the, not
That
at
was
the
a fourth option right there.
Not at the sacrifice of not playing in this portion
No, of course
his career,
not.
right?
But I think he's proven that he has a level above, I think, what we all thought. I'm imagining there's some, people in development or, looking out for players and purchasing that are going to look at him and go, hey, you know what? We need a player of that type. So hopefully.
Yeah, it's good to see he's improved, right? And he's gotten to this level at least. So let's hope it continues that way.
Hey, a player that is really trending up after yesterday is Kevin Paredes, who had 2 goals in the match, which is why he is the focus of our Auto Trader player spotlight. If you see a car, find it on Auto Trader. Alexis looking like a very smart guy. He was your player to watch yesterday. What about the tweaks to the personnel in the attack yesterday really helped open things up to put Paredes in a good spot to succeed?
I actually think it was probably more of the level of competition. I think they were giving him a little bit more space, but he was taking it. His ability to cut in, I think, is absolutely incredible. His ability to transition from, receiving the ball off of, a lack of possession or a turnover in the middle of the pitch. He's able to advance it pretty quickly. He's able to give you an outlet if you're a passer. He's able to do so much. But in front of goal, I think we're seeing so much more incisiveness than I think we thought he had when we've seen him in the past with the men's national team. Granted, this is more of a U23 team. But he's shown me a level above. And we talked about players that have gotten themselves into the conversation for the senior team, for the full men's national team. I think he just built that clout that he already has. It's there, but I think he's built himself into a much, much more important player for us so far from what we've seen.
He needed this one, I think, because I don't think he was good in the first 2 games. His time with the U.S. men's national team wasn't good. He looked like a kid when he got calls to the U.S. men's national team, which is fine, right? You get thrown in, and he's still a young kid. But I think we start to see flashes of him and the things that he could potentially do, which makes you excited, right? These young, exciting, attacking players, not all of them work out in the end, but it's good to see that we've been so married to the players that have been coming in and the names that have been coming in for the last 2 cycles. It's good to see that if the cycle ended today, we could start a new cycle. We're not at that point, but we have enough players in behind to think that it would be good in the future.
Yeah, Nico, what's your take on just where the U.S. as a whole, between the senior team and this group, are at in terms of positional competition?
It's funny because during the Copa America, we were begging for more positional competition because a lot of guys on the senior national team know that they're going to get called into camp and that the position is theirs. There's only a few places, right, that you really feel like a job is up for grabs or that you need to go into training. You got called up and you don't know if you're going to start or not. I think we need a little bit more of that. There are strong indicators for a couple of these guys that there's potential. Again, potential, right? I don't want to get carried away. I'm wary of the rivals we played and to not make too big of headlines. Yes, but this was great.
Can we take into context, though, that we were all screaming for Diego Luna to be on this team and where you're going to get a creative winger? I think we've seen that with Griffin Yao. I think we've seen that with Kevin Paredes move to the side. We haven't said Diego Luna's name since, and I think smart of Marko Mitrovic not to throw him into the France game too early or at all.
Griffin Yao.
Griffin Yao. To not be like, all right, let's not make his debut in this competition in a loss. Let's bring him in the next match. And you've seen him continuously grow into it. Đorđe Mihailović has gotten even better, gotten more informed. Granted, yes, the level of competition has dropped significantly since that France game, but still, I'm walking away with a lot more confidence than I had right before the France game.
But when you talk about the level of competition, I think the most frustrating thing is when you go into these things and you're supposed to beat a team. Just like the U.S. is supposed to get out of the Copa America group and they don't get it done. So I don't want to fault this group because they got the job done that they were supposed, at least we all thought they were going to get done, which is an accomplishment because you're not talking always just about ability. You're talking about emotions, and maybe one thing goes against you and your team reacts poorly. They've done all the things. You've mentioned it a couple times. 60, 65 minutes against France, they were good. So we're talking right now, there's been like a 30-minute period where they haven't been great. And even in that 30-minute period, they had some chances where they put France on the back foot. So all in all, I think they've played well. But I like the fact that they've gotten better each time, and hopefully that will carry on against a very good Morocco side.
We were obsessed with signature wins under Berhalter, and he didn't have any. Right here, you have an opportunity for this group, right? If you're talking about positional competition, Paredes had his moment to compete for a spot. He didn't look good. He did look like a kid, like you said, Tony, right? This is, for a lot of these guys, you know, for a lot of this potential conversation that maybe he can challenge for a spot, that can solidify with a big win against a team that's tough. And then in the next round, either Japan or Spain, if you do end up beating Morocco. So all this competition will come in handy because it will kind of make that medal shine a little bit on these guys and test that medal. So the extra step is still needed for these guys, and they have a prime opportunity against Morocco.
Coming out of a game, whether you're the favorite or not, 3-0. So you score multiple goals, you don't let any in. It took a strong team performance, but also some good individual performances as well. So I want to get you guys' take. We've talked about some of the standouts, but who were some names or players that really stood out to you, Nico, yesterday? I'll start with you, and we'll kind of go around this way.
Yeah, well, we were asking for Đorđe Mihailović to have a good creative game yesterday, and I think in the first half he did have a very strong performance, including that free kick. He took a page straight out of Sinisha's book and said, I'll hold his raka, and he said, there's another Mihailović that can take free kicks, and it was beautiful. On top of that, it was a good game. I like his partnership with Aronson, so it's good to see from Mihailović that we've been asking a little bit more of.
Yeah, I'll stick with Griffin Yao and the performance he had. I thought getting the start, big opportunity for him. I thought he grabbed the moment, and he was really good on the day, really brave, going forward, entertaining, fun to watch, had a lot of energy. So, yeah, I'll go Griffin Yao as my guy to that was the man of the match.
Yeah, I want to give a nod to Nathan Harriel, who I thought was great, especially on set pieces and corners. Absolutely incredible. Always
Friend of
found
the
the
show.
ball. Yeah, a great player. But for me, it would have to be Paredes. I think Paredes showed that he can take that next step. You know, we talked about him looking like a kid. He was also a much smaller person. He's growing into himself as a human being, and he's growing into the game, and that potential that we knew he had, we're starting to see glimpses of it. Can we see a full 90 against Morocco? That'll really go a long way into solidifying his position on the national team as a whole.
I'm going to give some love to the center back pairing of Walker Zimmerman and Miles Robinson, two of the other overage players on this roster. This was the first clean sheet that the United States has gotten during the group stage. I thought they were really good in distribution, keeping the team organized. Anytime Guinea did get some chances, they were good in shutting them down. So I thought overall, you expect these two to have good performances, being the two veterans, the most experienced players on the team. But they did what they needed to do, which sometimes, Tony, is the best thing that you can say about players in games like that where you are expected to win.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the two center backs because you can't press in games if you don't have trust in your center backs. And if your center backs aren't good and they don't have good cover and balance, all the rest of that press, because what's going to happen eventually is the ball's going to go over the top. So they need to be as good as anyone. And oftentimes we're not seeing them in the camera, right? Because we're watching the guys advance, the advanced positions pressing. But yeah, good on you for recognizing that for sure.
It was a good performance, and now Morocco up next on Friday as the U.S. begin their quest in the knockout stage to try and make it as far as they possibly can. It has, regardless, been a really impressive run for the U.S., who get to the knockout stage for the first time in 24 years.